Hello, I'm a newcomer to the workforce, taking my first steps into society. My father works in the interior design industry, which has gradually improved our family's livelihood. My grandfather is an extraordinary person. He raised 5 children of his own, and then took in and supported a friend's child as well. To give more detail, my grandfather was a businessman whose partner fell ill and had to send his later-born daughter to live with my grandparents. At that time, my grandparents had already married off their 6 children and were enjoying their retirement when they decided to legally adopt the daughter of an acquaintance who was in her late elementary school years. I was 10 years old at the time, and suddenly, my father had a new younger sister. She was 2 years older than me, but I started calling her aunt as if she were an older niece. My father inherited his business acumen from my grandfather. He's adept at selecting new items for the business, conducting thorough research, and leading them to success. I was an only child, but during my senior year of high school, my father's youngest sibling, who I call aunt, transferred to a university near our house. My parents were busy with their business, and my aunt took care of my meals while she was studying. She looked after me, worrying about my health and telling me to take it easy, even researching and buying energy drinks and multivitamins for me. When my parents had to go on a 23-day business trip, it was really convenient to have my aunt take care of my meals as a student preparing for exams. I worked hard in my studies and managed to get into the same university as my aunt. She used to be quite chubby in elementary school, but became unrecognizably slim after a rigorous diet by the time of university admission. Her face became much slimmer. My aunt, who lived with us, showed her gratitude by taking care of my meals. She was very pretty and focused solely on her studies. Despite many guys asking her out, she wasn't interested in anyone and decided to put off dating for later. When I entered university, my aunt treated me almost like a boyfriend. Even though there weren't any guys at school who caught her eye, she would say, "I prefer walking around arm in arm with my handsome nephew over anyone else." And we'd pretend to be a couple as we walked around campus. Sometimes we'd meet up in the cafeteria for meals, and if any annoying guys showed up, she'd signal for me to deal with them. One day, she complained about a guy who sat behind her in every class and kept throwing notes at her, which she found really irritating. So, I secretly checked out who this guy was. It was unbelievable that someone would bother my bright and cheerful aunt like that. I really didn't like it. However, my aunt was quite skilled at keeping such guys at bay. I found myself growing fond of her, not just because she was pretty, smart, and popular. She expressed a desire to join a volunteer club, despite her busy study schedule, wanting to do something meaningful in her 20s. The club didn't meet too often, just sometimes on Saturday mornings to provide necessary services at facilities or to go on rural service trips, and she asked me to join her. Without much thought, I joined the volunteer club with her. At school, no one knew we were aunt and nephew. When asked about our relationship due to how close we seemed, we would just say we knew each other well from living in the same neighborhood. Our first volunteer event involved taking a van to a farm. We gathered in front of the school and drove for about an hour to a farm that was harvesting produce to sell wholesale. It was my first time doing farm work, and although there were about 12 of us volunteering, eating the packed lunches we brought along made it a rewarding experience. We continued to volunteer once a month, and eventually, it was time for the much-anticipated rural service trip. Having only seen my parents tend to flowers, the concept of planting something with my own hands was completely foreign to me. The club members decided to stay overnight at the village hall, waking up at dawn to work on whatever the villagers asked us to do, and wandering the dark country roads at night. I was startled to see fireflies for the first time. I noticed that one of the members was planning to make a move on my aunt during this trip, so I stuck to her like glue to protect her. On the final day, after enjoying the watermelon and melon kindly prepared by the village head, we all had a drink, perhaps because it was something none of us had done before. Everyone fell asleep early. Throughout that time, my aunt would tell stories, and whenever our eyes met, she'd flash me a light smile, which always stirred a curious feeling inside me. On that night, with everyone else asleep, I entered a small room filled with only our luggage and confessed to my aunt. I told her how happy I was going to school and participating in club activities together. When I asked her how she felt, she admitted that she had been on a few dates with other men, but hadn't found the right one yet. She mentioned how she had grown fond of me since my senior year of high school, as she took care of my meals. And now that I was becoming a mature man, she thought of me often. We spent that night together. It was a first time for both of us, so we were quite awkward. We slept with the window slightly open, and the dawn air was cool. Luckily, our fellow club members slept through the sunrise, unaware. From that day forward, my aunt and I shared a secret and continued to see each other for several years. My aunt eventually met a boyfriend at work and has been dating him for a while. And I have a girlfriend. Last year, my aunt got married and is now planning to start a family. My grandfather gifted his youngest daughter a small studio apartment in the city, advising her to keep it as a retirement fund. My uncle is close to my aunt's ideal type, kind, diligent, and with a great sense of humor. He fits in well with the large family on my aunt's side and even gives me pocket money, saying there's no need for more since he works, but asking me to take good care of my aunt because she and I are close. In truth, my aunt first called me after an argument with her husband. She asked me to come out to a coffee shop, so I rushed over. Becoming a married woman, she was right to settle her feelings. The reason for their argument seemed trivial and forgettable later on. However, I supported her, thinking it would comfort her. After calming her down, I said, "Now you need to live well with my uncle. I'm going to start preparing for my own marriage. Let's only keep good memories from now on." My aunt returned home with a look of regret. A few days later, we gathered for my grandfather's birthday, and my aunt appeared cheerful. I keep an eye on how my first woman, my aunt, is doing. Yet, it seems we both need to prioritize our families over our desires and hold on to only the good memories.